A common usage of keyframing is for the scrolling of text, either vertically or horizontally. Title Studio provides 3 ways of achieving this effect. You can use one of the presets available in the FX browser, you can use the inbuilt credit roll feature, or you can manually create your own keyframe animation. I'm not going to deal with the presets here. What I want to do is first create a simple credit roll using keyframing, then do the same using the inbuilt credit roll feature. I'll also use this feature to create a text scroll, which is where text is made to scroll horizontally across the display. The credit roll feature is quick and easy to implement and doesn't involve keyframes. The keyframe method gives you more control but is more time consuming. The decision is yours regarding which method you adopt. Whichever method you use, a little preparation is in order. You need to create your credit list in a suitable format using a text editor that will save in rich text format. You also need to place tab stops at the beginning of each column. I've created my list in Microsoft Word and saved it as a rich text file. It has 2 columns, so has 2 tab stops. First, you need an event in your NLE to apply the Title Studio effect to. The type of event will depend upon the background you want for your credit roll. If it's to be a video clip event, you need to make sure that it's long enough to allow the credit roll to be read comfortably. If it's a media generator event, such as a solid colour, the length isn't so important, as it can be adjusted later on. I'm using Vegas Pro, which allows me to create an empty event, so I'm using that to apply the effect to. With the effect applied, I can click the Launch UI window button. As usual, I'll start with a clean slate by deleting the default scene entry. Now to create a new flat text entry. I'll now delete this default string. I can now click the Import File button and select my credit roll text file. As you can see, the tab stops have been imported with the text. The text colour needs changing from its imported colour to white. I can also set the font size to a suitable value. Now that's made a bit of a mess. This is because the page width is 100, so can't accommodate the increase in font size. Before I change this though, I need to place a check mark in the text wrap box. I'll now change the page width to a suitable value. This may have put things right, but the tab stops need moving to a suitable position. The layout of the text columns is down to personal choice. You may be happy with both columns being left justified. However, you can format it differently by changing the orientation of the tab stops. By default, they've been imported as left justified tabs, but you can change these to either center justified or right justified. How to do this is not very intuitive. In older versions of Continuum, you would simply right-click on a tab stop, and this would give you the option to change its orientation. In this version, that option isn't available. What you must do is double-click on the tab stop. This will change its orientation. Each double-click cycles through the available options. So if you want the left-hand column to be right justified instead of left justified, double-click the tab twice. You'll need to move the tab stops to get the desired result. With the credit roll text in the desired position, the roll animation can be implemented. With the CTI at the start of the timeline and the shape track selected, I can add a keyframe, then move the text down until it's just off the display. Because the toggle animate static mode button is in static mode, the interpolation mode for the position Y parameter needs changing from constant to linear. Now I need to put the CTI to the end of the timeline, add a keyframe, and move the text up and off the display at the top. Because this keyframe is at the end of the timeline, I can set the interpolation mode to hold. I can now play the sequence to see if I can read it okay. If you think the scroll is too fast or too slow, you can go back to your NLE and increase or decrease the event length. Don't forget to exit the UI with the Apply button. So that's the way it's done with keyframes. I'll now create the same credit roll using the inbuilt credit roll feature. To save a little time, I'll use the same project and simply delete the two keyframes. Now, in order to use the inbuilt tool, a new title container has to be created. To do this, click the Add New Container button. From the two options, select New Title Container. With the title container entry selected, an animation tab will be displayed in the Controls window. In the Animation Style drop-down, select Roll. And that's it. If the text scrolls at the wrong speed, go back to your NLE and adjust the length of the event as described in the previous section. The credit roll can be further enhanced using the parameters in the Animation tab. For instance, you can set up top or bottom mask values, or both, to limit the area of the display where this roll occurs. You can also feather these mask points using the blend parameters. You can even change the horizontal position of the scroll by adjusting the Position X parameter. There are many more parameters you can adjust in the Position tab. I won't be going through any of these here, but feel free to experiment. For this section, I'll start with a clean sheet. With the text scroll function, the text wrap checkbox must be left unchecked, and the justify mode can be left at left justified. I can now highlight the default text and hit delete. I've previously prepared a rich text format file containing a quote from Abraham Lincoln, which I'll import now. I'll change the font size to 25 and change the colour to white. Now to create a new title container. As with the roll function, an animation drop-down will appear in the Animation tab. This time I'll select Crawl, and that's it. You may find the crawl too fast or too slow. As I described in the previous section, you can go back into your NLE and lengthen or shorten the event to suit. The same options for masking and blending are available as for the credit roll. A point to note, you'll not get really smooth motion with crawling text. If it's looking too jerky, you need to increase the length of the NLE event so that the text crawls more slowly. This will minimize the jerkiness. Before I finish, I'd like to mention some of the parameters in the Animation tab. There's a checkbox labelled Maintain Speed, which is unchecked by default. If this option is checked, a keyframe is generated on the timeline. This keyframe fixes the time taken to complete the roll or crawl when the speed is set to the value in the parameter labelled Speed pixels per second. The default value is 300, which is the industry standard for the speed of motion. The position X parameter in the roll parameters determines the horizontal position of the roll. Similarly, the position Y parameter in the crawl parameters determines the vertical position of the crawl. As you've seen, it's relatively easy to create a credit roll using keyframe animation. It's even easier if you use the built-in tool. As always, thanks for watching. Until the next tutorial, bye for now.